Most people suffer not because of what happens to them, but because they cling to what they cannot control. They waste energy on losses, betrayals, until life itself controls them. Today, I will show you how to detach from what is beyond your grasp and become untouchable in a world built on uncertainty. The first principle in mastering the cold mindset is understanding the power of detachment. Detachment is not weakness, nor is it indifference in the shallow sense. It is the deliberate act of separating yourself from the things that appear to control you, but in reality, lie far beyond your influence. To be attached to what you cannot shape is to bind yourself to chains you cannot break. Men who attach themselves to outcomes, to people, or to circumstances that are outside their control are destined to live as slaves to disappointment. When storms arrive, they are swept away. When betrayal strikes, they collapse. When fortune shifts, they are left with nothing but regret. The one who cannot detach himself will forever be at the mercy of forces he does not command. To practice detachment is to strip yourself of illusions. Illusions that others will always be loyal, that circumstances will remain favorable, that the world will align itself with your expectations. Such illusions create a fragile state of mind, because when they shatter, as they inevitably will, you shatter with them. The detached man, however, does not place his soul into the hands of the uncertain. He knows the world is unpredictable, and therefore he does not lean on it for stability. His strength comes from his own ability to remain unmoved while everything else trembles. He views change, betrayal, and loss not as attacks against him, as the natural movement of life. By not expecting permanence, he suffers less when it collapses. The attached mind is addicted to control, but it seeks control where it does not exist. It demands that people behave as they desire. It begs fate to give them comfort. It insists the world should bend to its will. But this craving only ensures weakness, because the more one desires from what is uncontrollable, the more one is wounded by its unpredictability. Detachment, therefore, is the art of placing your focus only where your will has weight. It is not withdrawal from life, but a sharpening of perception, a recognition of where power ends and illusion begins. Imagine a man who ties his happiness to the loyalty of his friends. As long as they remain faithful, he feels secure. Once they betray him, as men often do, he falls into despair. His mistake was not the betrayal itself, but his dependence upon it. Detachment would have taught him that loyalty is never guaranteed, and therefore his peace should not rest upon it. He would still recognize the betrayal, but instead of being broken, he would use it as information, an observation of human nature that makes him wiser and colder in his dealings. Attachment blinds judgment. It forces decisions made in desperation rather than calculation. The man who fears losing love becomes a servant to it. The one who fears losing wealth clings so tightly to it that he becomes reckless in protecting it. The one who fears the loss of status humiliates himself to preserve appearances. These are chains that bend men into weakness. But the detached man, stripped of such fear, acts with clarity. He makes decisions not from emotion but from advantage. He does not crumble when love leaves, when wealth is stolen, or when honor is insulted. He simply adjusts, for his sense of self was never chained to them in the first place. True detachment is not about abandoning desire, but about mastering it. You may still desire wealth, power, loyalty, or love, but you do not attach your soul to their presence or absence. You pursue them as tools, as weapons, as advantages in the game of life. If they come, you use them. If they vanish, you continue unbroken. This is the essence of cold strength, to stand untouched by fortune's shifting winds. Men who grasp this become immovable, because nothing external holds their strings. The power of detachment also sharpens influence. Those who cannot be easily provoked are feared. Those who cannot be emotionally blackmailed are respected. When others see that you do not crumble under betrayal, when they see that you do not beg for approval, when they see that you can lose and remain composed, they recognize a kind of authority that cannot be fabricated. Detachment creates an aura of unshakable dominance, because while others rage, panic, or beg, you remain still. Stillness itself becomes a weapon, for nothing confuses the attached mind more than the man who does not react as expected. This is why the power of detachment is the foundation of strength. It is the shield that protects you from emotional manipulation. It is the armor that guards you from despair. It is the throne upon which you sit while others kneel before their fears. To live without detachment is to be chained to the chaos of the world. To live with it is to walk through fire without being burned, because the flames cannot reach what you no longer cling to. If detachment is the first weapon of power, then the second is the control of the inner fortress. Every man is surrounded by forces that he cannot command, shifting moods of others, the unpredictability of fortune, the treachery of allies, and the endless tide of events that arrive uninvited. But within him, there is one kingdom where his rule can be absolute: his own mind, his reactions, his ability to govern himself. Most men, however, abandon this fortress. They open the gates to fear, anger, despair, and impulse, allowing every external event to dictate their inner state. They live as conquered subjects, enslaved not by enemies, but by their own undisciplined emotions. The man who cannot rule himself will never rule anything else. Control of the inner fortress begins with clarity of perception. Emotions are storms that distort reality. Anger convinces you that striking blindly will solve your humiliation. Fear whispers that retreat is survival, even when retreat guarantees long-term defeat. Despair tells you that all is lost long before the battle is even decided. To give in to these storms is to surrender before the fight has even begun. The disciplined mind, however, recognizes emotions as passing illusions. It does not deny their existence but places them under guard. It sees anger, fear, and despair for what they are, forces that can be observed but not obeyed. By refusing to identify with these inner invaders, the man protects his fortress walls from collapse. The weak man imagines power lies in controlling others. He shouts, threatens, and manipulates, but inside, he is still trembling. His power is an act, a mask that cracks the moment he is tested. The true strength lies in remaining sovereign over yourself, to endure insult without trembling, to hear betrayal without collapsing, to face loss without drowning. This is mastery. He who controls himself is feared more than he who commands others, because his calm is unshakable and his silence is unreadable. When others attack him, they do not know whether they have succeeded, because no reaction betrays his state. This uncertainty unsettles enemies more than anger ever could. To control the inner fortress also means to regulate your focus. Most people allow their attention to scatter across every distraction, every provocation, every worthless voice. They leave their fortress doors unguarded, so that the smallest noise from outside pulls their energy in 1,000 directions. But the disciplined man gathers his focus like a blade. He decides what deserves his attention and what does not. He ignores what he cannot control, conserving his strength for what he can shape. This selective focus is the foundation of power, because energy is not wasted on battles that cannot be won. Keeping his vision fixed only on what falls within his grasp, he grows stronger while others exhaust themselves in futility. Inside the fortress, patience is also cultivated. Most men are driven by the urgency of impulse. They want immediate reaction, immediate revenge, immediate gratification. Impulse exposes weakness because it reveals predictability. The man who cannot wait reveals his strategy to his enemies. The one who must react quickly is easily provoked. Patience, however, makes the fortress unassailable. To wait silently while others burn themselves out, to watch with cold eyes as your rivals reveal their hands, to restrain yourself until the moment when striking is decisive. This is the discipline of power. The patient man lets his enemies waste themselves, and when they are weakest, he moves with precision. Another element of inner control is the regulation of desire. Desire is the most dangerous invader of the mind, because it disguises itself as necessity. It tells you that without wealth, without affection, without recognition, you are nothing. And so men surrender to it, chasing endlessly, degrading themselves for its fulfillment, enslaving themselves to those who can grant or withhold it. But the master of the fortress disciplines desire. He allows it to exist, but does not let it govern him. He can pursue wealth without being desperate for it. He can enjoy affection without being chained to it. He can accept recognition without bending for it. Because he does not need these things to remain whole, no one can control him by offering or denying them. His independence terrifies others, because it is rare to find a man who cannot be bribed by pleasure or broken by deprivation. The fortress of the mind also requires a constant awareness of weakness. Every man has cracks in his walls, insecurities, fears, attachments that can be exploited by those who know how to strike. To control yourself is to know these weaknesses intimately and guard them. If anger is your weakness, you must train in silence. If vanity is your weakness, you must strip yourself of the need for applause. If lust is your weakness, you must starve it until it no longer commands you. Enemies will always seek the crack in the wall, but when you have sealed it, they find no entry. The man who hides nothing from himself, who admits his flaws and masters them, becomes untouchable. Control of the inner fortress is not built in comfort but in trial. It is in betrayal that you learn composure. It is in loss that you learn resilience. It is in insult that you learn restraint. Each hardship is a test of your walls, and each time you endure without collapse, the fortress grows stronger. Weak men curse adversity because it exposes their fragility. The disciplined man welcomes adversity because it trains his mind to remain unmoved, cold, and sovereign. He does not pray for easier battles. He uses hard battles to temper his own steel. The third principle of the cold mindset is the art of cold observation over emotional reaction. Most men fail not because they lack strength, but because they lose themselves in the storms of their own feelings. They see betrayal and lash out. They feel insulted and rush to defend their pride. They encounter loss and collapse into despair. Reaction is their instinct, and reaction is their weakness. The man who cannot separate his mind from the pull of emotion becomes a puppet to circumstance. He dances when provoked, he collapses when struck, and he exposes his true nature every time someone presses against him. Observation, by contrast, transforms you into a strategist rather than a servant of impulse. To observe coldly is to view events as they are, stripped of the illusions that emotions impose. Anger makes betrayal look larger than it is. Fear makes obstacles appear impossible, and desire convinces you that what is unnecessary is vital. When emotions distort perception, judgment fails. When you train yourself to observe with cold detachment, you see betrayal not as a wound but as information. You see obstacles not as enemies but as puzzles to be solved. You see desire not as necessity but as bait, carefully placed to trap you. Cold observation transforms chaos into clarity because it cuts through the fog that feelings create. The man who reacts emotionally is predictable. He is easy to manipulate because anyone who knows his weaknesses can provoke him into revealing his hand. Anger makes him strike too soon. Fear makes him retreat too early. Vanity makes him chase recognition at any cost. His enemies need not destroy him. They simply guide his reactions until he destroys himself. But the one who observes without reacting becomes dangerous. His silence unsettles. His stillness unnerves. His lack of visible weakness confuses. Enemies grow reckless when they cannot read you. Allies respect you more when they realize you are not easily swayed. In this way, cold observation is not only protection but also a weapon, for unpredictability itself is power. Observation requires discipline of distance. You must learn to step outside of yourself, to watch your own anger rising, your fear whispering, your vanity tempting, and to treat these movements as though they belong to someone else. Instead of reacting, you analyze. Instead of defending your pride, you ask, what does this reveal about them? Instead of striking back immediately, you ask, what advantage can I gain from waiting? Each emotion becomes an object of study, and every provocation becomes a source of information. Those who remain trapped in their feelings learn nothing from conflict, while those who observe coldly extract wisdom from every blow. To cultivate cold observation, you must also slow the pace of your response. The weak man believes every situation demands immediate reaction. He believes silence is weakness, patience is surrender, and waiting is cowardice. But in truth, silence is disguise, patience is strategy, and waiting is control. By refusing to react, you deny others the satisfaction of controlling your behavior. By delaying your move, you let time expose the truth that emotion tries to hide. An insult that stings in the moment loses its power once observed in silence. A betrayal that enrages in the first hour often reveals deeper opportunities in the days to come. The one who rushes to react forfeits advantage. The one who waits and observes holds the board in his favor. Observation also extends beyond others. It applies to yourself. The greatest strategist knows his own impulses, as well as he knows the moves of his rivals. When you watch yourself with cold clarity, You begin to see the patterns that have ruled you in the past. You recognize the triggers that ignite your anger, the wounds that resurface through fear, the desires that cloud your vision. And once recognized, they lose their grip. You become less a creature of habit and more an architect of decision. Cold observation transforms you from a man who stumbles blindly into traps into one who sees them long before they are sprung. The man who trains himself in observation develops an aura that others can feel. When he enters a room, he does not rush to speak, to laugh, or to impress. He watches. He listens. He weighs the tone of words, the movements of eyes, the rhythm of silence. While others reveal themselves in their eagerness to be heard, he remains still, gathering information, placing each piece where it belongs in his mind. By the time he speaks, he has already mapped the weaknesses, ambitions, and insecurities of those around him. His words carry weight because they are calculated, not spilled in haste. His presence unsettles, because those who cannot read him feel exposed under his gaze. Cold observation is the opposite of arrogance. The arrogant man assumes he already knows, and thus he stops seeing. He reacts to protect his fragile image, blind to the fact that his reactions expose him further. The cold observer assumes nothing. He watches long enough to see truth reveal itself. He does not need to declare his strength, because his restraint already demonstrates it. He does not need to shout his certainty, because his silence speaks louder than words. Where the arrogant man is vulnerable, the observer is protected, because knowledge shields him in ways pride never can. This principle also teaches the value of restraint in conflict. Most battles are not lost because one side is weaker, but because one side reacts without calculation. They strike too soon, reveal too much, or expose their own desperation. The cold observer allows his enemy to burn with emotion, to reveal his intentions in the heat of reaction, and only then does he move. By striking when the other is weakest and blind, the observer multiplies his power. Victory comes not from strength alone, but from timing, and timing is the fruit of patience rooted in observation. The fourth principle of the cold mindset is the ability to turn loss into leverage. Most men view loss as the ultimate defeat. They suffer a betrayal and believe they have been stripped of all power. They lose wealth and assume their future has collapsed. They lose status and imagine they are ruined forever. But such men fail to understand the deeper truth. Loss is not the end. It is transformation. The man who clings to what is taken from him becomes a prisoner of the past. The man who reshapes his loss into strength becomes more dangerous than before. Loss is inevitable. How you wield it determines whether it breaks you or arms you. To turn loss into leverage requires a shift in perception. When something is taken, most cry out in despair because they have tied their identity to possession. They say, "Without this, I am nothing." But this reveals their weakness, for it shows their dependence. The cold mind refuses to grant external things such authority. When stripped of wealth, it does not collapse, but instead studies the freedom that poverty brings. The ability to move unnoticed, the chance to rebuild without expectation, the hunger that sharpens ambition. When betrayed by allies, it does not wallow but records the betrayal as a lesson, a deeper insight into human nature that will prevent future wounds. Each loss is a message, and the man who reads it correctly finds strength where others find only despair. Loss can also be a mask. The man who suffers defeat in public may use it to conceal his true strength, appearing weaker than he is, drawing out arrogance in his rivals. By accepting humiliation without protest, he lures his enemies into lowering their guard, believing him to be finished. Yet in silence, he rebuilds, and when he strikes again, it is from a position they never expected. In this way, loss becomes camouflage, and camouflage becomes strategy. Those who cannot stomach temporary defeat never discover the advantage that lies hidden in appearing broken. Another way loss becomes leverage is through the discipline it demands. Comfort softens men. Luxury makes them careless. Security blinds them to danger. But loss strips away illusions, sharpening the will like a blade. The man who has lost learns to live without, and in learning this, he discovers his independence. What can you take from the man who has already endured emptiness? How can you frighten him with deprivation when he has already survived it? He becomes untouchable, because nothing you threaten him with carries weight. Loss has already burned away his weakness, leaving only resilience behind. Every loss also reveals who is loyal and who is opportunistic. When fortune smiles, allies crowd around, eager to share the glow of success. But when fortune turns, they vanish, or worse, they betray. This is painful, but it is also clarity. Loss unmasks the faces of those who were false, and though it wounds, it also cleanses. Better to know who will abandon you in hardship than to discover it too late in moments of danger. The cold man uses this knowledge as a weapon, discarding the unworthy and tightening his circle around only the proven few. His losses refine his power, stripping away dead weight and sharpening his network into something lean and reliable. Loss can also serve as fuel. Desire born of comfort is soft and fragile, but desire born of deprivation is ruthless. When stripped of what he values, the disciplined man channels the wound into drive. Betrayal turns into the resolve never to be dependent again. Defeat transforms into the hunger for victory at any cost. Poverty hardens into the ambition to seize resources so firmly that no one can steal them again. While others remain broken by loss, the cold strategist converts pain into fire, fire into motion, and motion into conquest. He rises because he refuses to waste suffering on grief alone. Even in reputation, loss can be an advantage. A man who has endured disgrace and yet continues unbroken frightens others, for they see he cannot be controlled by shame. A man who has been cast out and yet builds anew becomes more respected than one who never faced exile at all. Reputation rebuilt upon ruin is stronger because it demonstrates resilience. People instinctively follow those who cannot be destroyed, for survival is the highest form of power. By enduring loss openly and then reshaping it into strength, you establish yourself as unyielding, and unyielding men become feared and respected in equal measure. Loss also teaches the art of detachment. When you survive what you thought you could not live without, you discover that the chains of dependency were illusions all along. You believed that love, wealth, or recognition were essential, yet here you stand without them, alive and moving forward. This realization liberates you. You become less fearful of future losses because you have already endured and emerged. The fear of loss enslaves most men. The one who has lost and still stands walks freely. He does not beg, he does not cling, he does not tremble when threatened. He knows that what is taken can be replaced or reshaped or lived without entirely. This freedom itself becomes power because nothing external can chain him again. The ability to turn loss into leverage requires a cold eye and a disciplined will. It requires rejecting the instinct to collapse and instead asking at every defeat, what does this reveal? What does this sharpen? What can I take from this? It requires patience to endure the hollow silence that follows collapse, and strength to search within that silence for the lesson hidden there. The weak man wastes loss by drowning in self-pity. The strong man bends loss into an instrument that cuts deeper than victory ever could. Power does not belong to the man who clings, reacts, or collapses under what he cannot control. It belongs to the one who detaches from illusions, fortifies his inner world, observes with cold clarity, and turns loss itself into a weapon. Such a man cannot be manipulated by emotion, cannot be enslaved by fear, and cannot be broken by betrayal. While others remain chained to the chaos of fortune, he stands unmoved, sovereign over himself. This is the essence of a cold mind, untouchable, disciplined, and feared not because of what he shows, but because of what cannot be taken from him.